Hey everyone, thanks for calling by and welcome to the Holy Shed, the littlest parish in Christendom. Mostly found here at the bottom of our garden, except when I'm in London or Yorkshire or Australia. But here we are, and it's big enough to fit you all in. Now, it's almost Lent, which has been actually a quite special time in the shed over the past couple of years since, we started at the beginning of the first lockdown. And I'm really looking forward to Lent in the shed again this year. We've got a couple more weeks before that, and I'll explain more about what we'll be doing probably next week. But here and now, I want to continue with the Epiphany theme, which we have been looking at for a little while now, despite the fact that the church season of Epiphany has now well and truly gone. And the reason that I want to do this, to continue with it, is because, there's a couple more epiphanies and epiphanous people that I would like to talk about. There's loads and loads and loads, actually, but certainly a couple more. But first of all, how about this for an epiphany? Whoa! In case you don't recognize this little person, she or he is a long-tailed tit. I find they often move about between trees and bushes in the garden or roundabout in little gangs, just flooding the air with their little squeaky songs. They're lovely, they're delicate, they're beautiful, they're different to all the other tits, aren't they? And they're full of grace, I would say, a gift. Bird of the day, I hereby declare them. Fabulous. So, what I want to talk about today is the epiphany of kindness. Because you see, kindness, I reckon, often is an epiphany, something unexpected and truly wonderful. Now, you'll know that I often say that hope is our superpower, and I believe that. I think that hope is our intrinsic capacity to reimagine things a different way, a better way. And it's something that we all possess. And hope, I think, as our superpower, can transform situations, if only by empowering us to deal with those situations more effectively, less fearfully, more creatively. But get this, I believe we have another superpower, which is the capacity to be kind. And that's something, again, that we all possess, something which is, in no way tame or pink and fluffy as it may easily get the reputation, but something which is absolutely strong and powerful and which can, again, transform situations, change lives, repair relationships, move things forward positively. And often, being kind, you have to say, the good side of it is it costs nothing. It costs absolutely nothing to be kind, very often. There are times, however, when it costs quite a lot. I mean, quite a lot, but that's another thing. The writer Leo Tolstoy said that nothing can make our life or the lives of other people more beautiful than perpetual kindness. I believe that kindness is a way of spreading, of making beauty in the world. Jack Kerouac goes a bit further than that, really, to suggest that kindness is actually the essence of heaven. He writes this, he says, practice kindness all day to everybody, and you will realize that you are in heaven now. Okay? Practice kindness all day to everybody, and you'll realize that you are in heaven now. Well, look, not even the best of us can be kind all the time with everyone. When the world feels unsafe or, just life charges at us with all the stresses and sorrows that it can bring, when stuff gets hard, it can be very challenging to remain kind. And I certainly do not want to spread guilt about that. Sometimes, I have to say, I am not kind. I know you find that hard to believe, but sometimes I'm not kind. Pat will definitely confirm that. But I do believe that we can all lean into kindness even when the going gets tough. But back to Jack Kerouac. What an interesting thought about kindness and heaven, because I think he's saying that heaven isn't just receiving kindness, that can be pretty heavenly, but he says really heaven is giving kindness. Give kindness all day long, he says, and you'll realize that you are in heaven now. Being kind, I think, is a taster of heaven, a starter, if you like, before the main course. And receiving kindness, well, that can be an epiphany too, and also a revealing or a taster of heaven in itself. But it's the giving of kindness that really transports us into the very heart and essence of heaven. A lot of people look for meaning in their life by being smarter than the rest. I think that's what the name of the game is, or by being more knowledgeable or more successful, more wealthy. But I decided a long time ago that I wanted my life to have meaning through being kind. And if that's all that's written on my gravestone, he was a kind bloke, I would rest easy with that. It would be enough. The greatest people in the world are not the most successful or powerful or wealthy or clever, but the most kind. So, what is kindness? Well, as I see it, kindness is love in action. I'd like to underscore that to you. To me, kindness, what is it? It's love in action. And I think that's important because, the big problem with the word love is that it can mean pretty much nothing at all, really. It's so very deeply, profoundly cliched, as we'll see in a couple of days' time on Valentine's Day, or pink and fluffy. So, what's love? Love, I'm saying, is kindness, and kindness is love in action. I can't love without showing kindness. Not possible. To use theological language, we could say that kindness is love incarnate. Love become flesh, love in visible, tangible form, love made real. Kindness is love in reality. Kindness is a way of making beauty everywhere. An unkind world is a pretty profoundly ugly world, isn't it? So when St. John says God is love in the New Testament, I think he's really saying, or could be saying, God is kindness. I think that would be a helpful synonym. God is kindness, because that is the real and practical way that love shows up in the world. So yes, surely every act of kindness is some kind of divine epiphany if God is love and love is kindness. Every act of kindness is a revealing of God, of the divine, a taster of heaven. Worth thinking about, eh? Often we Christians give the impression that we, the Christians, invented the God of love. That all the other religions have all kinds of things, but they don't have the God of love. And that the Old Testament, as we like to call it, well, I don't, reveals a God of anger and vengeance. But the New Testament, this reveals a God of grace and love in Jesus. Well, you know what? Not to put too fine a point upon it, that is basically bollocks. From a literary perspective, God, the character of God in the Bible, is a wobbly, unstable character, if you know what I mean. And not just in the Hebrew Bible, sometimes this and sometimes that. God appears, if you take God as a literary character in the Bible, God almost appears schizoid in places. And I think the reason for this, as I see it anyway, is because, we can't find God in the raw in the Bible, God as God is. Of course we can't. That's not how it works. God can't be put into a book. God can't be reduced to human words and pictures. What we do find in the Bible is God through the lens of human experience. And that experience varies depending on, circumstances, on how the writers feel or what they're going through. So, for all of us, when we're faced with, a big, bad, ugly enemy in life, that's when we're likely to pray to God as if he were a badass warrior in the sky on our side. If life is hunky dory, then we're likely to picture God like a lovely shepherd cradling the little lambs. Do you see what I'm saying? We picture God, and God is pictured in the Bible through the lens of human experience and human thinking at that time. So the image varies. Of course it does. Sometimes wonderful, sometimes not so much. Sometimes a God we feel really chuffed about and proud to be a part of, and sometimes a God that we feel frankly pretty embarrassed about. Behave, God, you know. Sometimes we find a God of all mankind, of all humankind. Sometimes what we find is, a tribal God. So yes, there are indeed less than complementary portrayals and images of God in the Bible. But, and this is very important, but the fact is, the so-called Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, are completely packed with loads and loads of references to the loving kindness of God. It's so easy to just kind of make it a black and white, this or that image, the Old Testament. Yeah, well, I hate the God of the Old Testament, but I really like the God of the New Testament. It really isn't quite like that. And sometimes we could look at that in both parts of the Bible. But the fact of the matter is, despite the fact that there are, images of God in the Old Testament that we may not like, there are lots and lots and lots of portrayals of God and references to God, to the loving kindness of God. Kindness and God are all over the place in the Hebrew scriptures as well as in the Christian scriptures. And there's that beautiful statement in the prophet Micah 6:8, which says, it says something like this. It says, "What does God require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God?" I love that. If you want to know what faith or religion is really all about, what the essence of it is, here you go. It's justice, it's kindness, it's piping down that ego. Okay? Justice and kindness and humility are all expressions of love in action. To be kind, as to be just, as to be, humble and non-egotistical. All of these things are what it means to be godly in the truest sense of the term. So the man who completely changed my young life, honestly, in such a way that I sit here today saying what I'm saying, being who I am, the man who I would credit with that was a beautiful, idiosyncratic preacher known mostly as Mr. North. He was Wally North, but he was rather reverentially referred to as Mr. North. He was, probably the most eloquent preacher that I've ever heard. He was a preacher of grace and love and also holiness. And when I was 17, I was basically, I was part of a brethren church. I was completely disinterested in church and God and religion, blah, blah, blah. It was for me. I mean, I did still go to church, but my three real preoccupations were music, the Beatles. It was the 60s, and Liverpool was the world centre, it felt like anyway, of popular music. Music absorbed my life. So there was music, there was LFC, you know what that is? Liverpool Football Club. And thirdly, there were girls. And there were some pretty attractive girls at church, which was no doubt part of what kept me connected with it all. But as I say, at 17, meeting and listening to Wally North transformed my life. Under his influence, for the first time, I felt God as a presence within me. My spirit was awakened. And well, here I am. And, looking back, I interpret faith very differently to the way that I did back at that time. But It is Mr. North, Wally now, long gone to glory, as they say. It was him who got me here. And the journey that I'm on has a direct link right back to a moment in the upstairs room of a Victorian house in Anfield, in Liverpool, where I heard this man preaching, and God's Spirit took a grip on my life as had never happened before. I can tell you more about it sometime, but it was amazing. But anyway, the point of me telling you all this is, aged 18, I met Pat, and we fell madly in love. I mean, I actually proposed to Pat the third time we met. I don't mean on our third date. We didn't have a date. It was the third time I met her. I told her I loved her, and I asked her if she'd marry me. And hey, it's not just me. She said yes. I mean, we were naive, we were enthusiastic, and mysteriously became pregnant. Miraculous, which was devastating in that kind of Christian environment at that time. And I was Mr. North's blue-eyed boy. I mean, I felt seen by him. He referred to me. He saw me as a young man that was, filled with God's Spirit and going places. He saw me as having, a future ministry of some significance, which was quite amazing considering how old I was at the time. And I can tell you this, that speaking with him and explaining that we were having a baby before we were married was one of the hardest things I have ever done. I said to him, I've messed up, haven't I? I've thrown away my ministry. He sort of had this beautiful smile on his face, and he grinned at me as he looked with his penetrating blue eyes straight into my eyes. And he said, Davy boy, when our hearts are toward God, he turns even our transgressions into blessings. Bam! I mean, that was epiphany, if ever there was one. The kindest thing I felt anyone had ever said to me. Now, look, that's a long time ago. I see life very differently now. Looking back, I see no transgression back there. What do I see? I see two enthusiastic kids with quite a lot of chemistry going on, who loved each other to bits. And, well, here we are, 50 plus years later, despite the fact that no one at the time, maybe he did, but no one seemed to believe that this relationship would last. But in that context, I felt the kindness of God through that man in such a way that it formed and shaped my life forever. If there's one thing that I wish to, characterize everything that I say and do as a person, it is grace, divine kindness. It was an epiphany that changed everything for me. And the amazing thing is that into the bargain, we got a Jenny. There she is. Oh my goodness. Would we even dream of being without her in our life now? But, it was all a little bit painful at the time. Isn't she lovely? Kindness creates epiphanies. Kindness makes beauty wherever it goes. There's a song by U2 called Grace that says, Grace makes beauty everywhere. And it's a lovely song, by the way. And I think, to me, grace and epiphany are just different ways. Grace and kindness, rather, are just two ways of talking about the same thing. Grace and kindness make beauty wherever they go. There are so many lovely stories. Like, for example, the encounter a few years back when a Muslim woman met a Trump supporter, and transformed the situation there with kindness. I mean, just to set it up, there was an anti-Trump demonstration after Trump was elected, and a young supporter of Donald Trump found himself in this demonstration surrounded by angry protesters against Trump. And yeah, I'd like to show you what happened.
I noticed you with the hat, and I noticed that you were surrounded by some people, and I noticed that they were being kind of threatening.
I heard a click of a lighter right behind my ear, and there were about 3 people trying to light my shirt on fire with lighters.
And then somebody snatched your hat off your head. And that's the point where something kind of snapped inside me because I wear a Muslim hijab, and I've been in situations where people have tried to snatch it off my head,
Wow.
and I rushed towards you and I just started screaming, "Leave him alone, give me that back."
I don't think we could be any further apart as people, and yet it was just kinda like this common, "That's not okay" moment. You are genuinely the only Muslim person I know. It's not that I've actively avoided, it's just
Yeah.
I've just never been in the position where I can, interact
Mhm.
for an extended period of time. So, I guess my views on, the Muslim community have been influenced by a lot of the news articles and things of that nature.
I feel like a lot of times in the media, you don't see the normal Muslim, the one that listens to classic rock like I do. You don't meet that Muslim.
Can you tell me about where you grew up? What was that part of your life like?
So I was born in Baghdad, in Iraq. I moved to the US when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
Being a Muslim girl, I stood out in almost every single way that you can in middle school, the worst time to stand out. What about you? How was it like when you grew up?
I was homeschooled,
Mhm.
so it was a vastly different experience socially. I didn't have, I guess, as many friends as most people would. I only went to public school 1 year of my life, and I got in 3 fights, and I lost all of them.
Aw.
I actually lost a lot of friends because of this election, because of my political stance. So, I hope that I can be the reason that someone decides to talk to someone as opposed to just cutting them out of their life or blocking them on Twitter,
Yeah.
you know?
I'd like for this to encourage other people to engage in more
Yeah,
conversations with people that you don't agree with.
this is what it's all about. I'm so glad I wasn't the only one who felt like that.
How lovely is that? And there's a longer video of the two of them in conversation, about 10-minute one, which is really well worth a look. And I'll post that up on Facebook as soon as I can after we've finished here. So what I want to do now is just close with a poem by an amazing Palestinian American poet called Naomi Shihab Nye. I love her work, and this poem is called Kindness. And I've put the words, I think, on.
I noticed you with the hat,
Mhm.
and
Here you go. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go. So you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers, eating maize and chicken, will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know how kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you see the size of the cloth. then it's only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. A prayer. I believe kindness is love in action, the finest godlike virtue of the lot. I saw it once when a homeless guy bequeathed his treasured blanket to a young man, a newcomer to pavements and drafty doorways. Also, when a nurse paused on a crazy busy night in A&E to make a little girl laugh who'd been waiting and waiting and waiting for hours. Also, when a man gently ushered his bride of 60 years who'd forgotten where she was. It happens all the time, mostly unnoticed. Pay it forward acts of goodness and glee, random favours, everyday courtesies bestowed with a smile or a modest exchange. God help me to stay human in this oft-times careless world, to be mindful of the little moments each day where people easily fall through cracks of an unacknowledged presence. I believe each and every kindness is a gentle epiphany, a sparkle of glory, a peephole on heaven. The kindness is what love looks like when we take it out of the box and put it to use instead of talking about it interminably. Amen. Okay, well, it's time for a wee drink. So if you have something handy, I invite you to join me now in a little toast. It's a toast to simple everyday virtues, to kindness, a toast to all those in our lives who routinely show us kindness. May we be more mindful and more grateful for them. A toast to the countless people who breeze through life, showing kindness without a second thought. May they flourish and learn to be endlessly kind to themselves. To life, L'chaim. Well, dear friends, that's just about it for this week. Tomorrow morning, I will be on Radio 2 on the early show with Zoe Ball. It's the eve of Valentine's Day, of course, and I'm giving a little pause for thought, which I'm sure you will enjoy. At least you'll enjoy the story that I'm telling in it. So join me if you can. Otherwise, I will post a link later in the day. And I'm going to finish now, actually, with the adorable Emma Thompson, reading that poem that I just rather badly read. I think she does it, well, she would, wouldn't she? Very much better. It's dedicated to her friend Amelia Clark in August 2020. So, it's back in the pandemic era, and that's the kind of backdrop to it. And yeah, it's a very beautiful poem, beautifully read by Emma Thompson. So go well, have a great week. Be kind to people around you. Be kind to yourself. Stay human. And we'll see each other again next week, hey? Do it all again. See you soon.
Hello, little M. It's Big M here. You've asked me to read the poem Kindness by Naomi Shihab Nye. And you asked me to dedicate it to someone or some people or a group. And I thought, gosh, there are so many choices. And then I thought I would dedicate it instead to our collective future, to the people that we are going to be after this. Because what the crisis has made so painfully clear is that we can't go back to normal, we have to replace some of our priorities with others. We have to place people before profit, place cooperation before competition, and above all, we have to access what has been so abundant, which is kindness. And we have to apply it to all our systems. And the first question that we need to ask ourselves when we address anything is, but is it kind? And I think this poem puts it better than anything I've ever seen before. That's my stomach, by the way. Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers, eating maize and chicken, will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. Or my stomach.